This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and His power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church, and he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's Ministries. You'll never be the same.
Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Today I want to talk about empathy in the modern Christian. Empathy in the modern Christian. To empathize, to have empathy for someone, is to not only be aware of what they are going through, but to internalize what they are going through. I'm not just cognizant that you are hungry. I'm not just cognizant that you are joyful, but I share in your joy. I share in your sorrow. I share in your pain. I share in your hopes. I share in your desires. And I want to talk today about what does it mean for the Christian, the modern day Christian, to empathize with somebody else. In Matthew 25, Jesus says, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison or sick, you visited me. And the disciples said to Jesus, but Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? When did we visit you, when you were sick or in prison? When did we do all of this? And Jesus says, for as much as you've done so to the least of these, your brothers, and I would add, and your sisters, you've also done unto me. And what Jesus is talking about is empathy. He's saying, you saw my need, you met my need, and because you became one with me in my need. And so I want to break this down. I think that empathy, believe it or not, is one of the political issues of our time. And you won't hear this word uttered too loudly, but it's really at the core of one of the biggest political struggles that we have in America today. And the question that we struggle over in government, we struggle over it in society, is what is my responsibility to my brother? Jesus says, love your brother, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And the question then becomes, who then is my neighbor? Is my neighbor the person who lives next door to me? Is my neighbor people who look like me? Is my neighbor people who are economically and socially on my level? Or is it broader? Is it broader than me? And it's becoming an issue. It has become an issue in America because our workforce is shrinking. The number of people who are poor, the number of people who are on public assistance continues to rise. And then the question becomes, what is the obligation of the nation? What is the obligation of the government to reach out and to provide programs and protection for the hungry? What is the government's responsibility for providing for the elderly? Many of you who are looking at this program are on Medicare, maybe Medicaid. And, already, the Congress is talking about, is it time to cut Medicaid? Is it time to make the access to health care for people who are poor, to make the requirements even higher? And it's a governmental issue, but it is also an issue for the church. And historically, in America, the church has driven public policy. The church has really been an advocate of public policy for the poor. The church, and when I say church, I'm talking about the church universal, has been a church. Christian churches have been advocates for migrants. People wanted to immigrate to America. And America has a lot of people who've come here by boat. You have the white Europeans who've come by boat. You have people like my ancestors who also came by boat, but our boats were slave ships. And, but that's just the way it is. And that's the nation that we are. But there are modern day economists who are looking at America right now, looking at the budget process in America and how we make our budgets, and asking hard questions of what is really the responsibility of the government for the poor. And in the church, we raise that same question, but another way, which is, what is the church's responsibility? What is really the responsible thing? What does God want the Christian? What does God want you? And what does God want me? As people who believe in Jesus Christ, what is God's expectation of us for the poor? And again, I come back to this word where I began, empathy. And what does it mean to empathize? If I have empathy for a person who is without a home, who's living on the street, and living at best maybe in a tent, but very often there are people who don't even have the luxury of a tent, and they're sleeping on the ground. And what is my responsibility to the person who is sleeping on the ground? There's a fellow who every now and then he sleeps in the doorway, the main doorway of my church. My church has 3 doors, and he chooses the door that I enter. The one door that we had the alarm coded to. And so if you're the first one in the church, you got to go through that door, to turn off the alarm. It sets the alarm, but it turns the alarm off too. You go in with your code. And the other day, I was walking in, and the guy was there, sleeping outside the church. He rolled over and he looked at me, and then he got up. I talked to him and said, "Good morning." And the fellow asked me, he said, I have a favor to ask. I said, "What is that?" And he said, "I need a place where my mail can come. Can I tell people that they can send my mail, they can forward it here to the church?" And I said, "Certainly. We'll do that." And I talked to my secretary about it. I'd already talked with her about him. And I said, "Look, does it bother you that this man is sleeping next to the door of the church?" And she said, no, he seems to be harmless. He's respectful, and he's not threatening me. And I said, well, as long as he's not threatening you, I think, I'm going to allow the guy to stay there. And, we're providing shelter for somebody in need. Now, what am I doing in that instance? To me, what think I'm trying to do is to be empathetic to the man on the ground, the man who's sleeping on the concrete in front of my church door. And, but how far should I go? How far does God require me to go for that brother who is sleeping on the concrete next to the entrance of my church? If I am to empathize with him, does that mean that I need to get a mat and sleep on the floor with him? Sleep on the ground, outside in the cold, in the rain, in the snow, in the heat? Is that what really God requires of me? Or is God requiring of me something deeper, which is it enough for me to feed the hungry, to give him part of my fish dinner, or does God require me to try to help the person learn how to fish for himself? And what does God really want me to do if I am going to empathize for somebody else or have empathy toward someone else? And I think that is becoming a bigger issue in America today than any of us may have imagined. Because one of the things that has surprised me has been the response of some Christians, some in the far right, who are very, very religious people. I don't think anybody would ever question the faith of the quote-unquote evangelical Christian in America. They're very fervent in their faith. But there are many who are raising the question, who am I required to be empathetic to? Am I required to be empathetic to the poor man, the poor woman who is sleeping destitute out on the street? Or is my requirement from God to reach out to people like me first? Is my requirement from God to reach out to the poor who are in my family, the poor who are in my blood lineage, who are the poor who are my same skin tone? What does God really require me to do? And if you haven't heard it, you watch the news more carefully, because that's really one of the issues that's happening. We hear it in the White House, in some of the far-right politicians, but we also hear it in the church that, in quote, charity begins at home. And that is what I'm talking about today, because when Jesus says, for as much as you've done unto the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you've also done unto me, I think he's talking to America and saying that we need to help those who are in need, regardless of color, regardless of race, creed, that all of us are human beings in God's sight. My friends, I'll be back in just a minute, but while we take the break, I want you to think about this question of empathy and ask yourself, who do I give empathy to? I'll be right back.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because, of course, you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Today I'm talking about empathy in the modern Christian. And empathy is to feel intently what somebody else is feeling. Empathy is different than sympathy. To have sympathy for someone is also to feel for them. When somebody dies, we have sympathy for them, and we feel sorry for them. But to have empathy for somebody is not just to feel sorry, but to become one with them in your feelings. And the question that I'm raising today is, what is the expectation of God for the modern Christian in terms of feeling for somebody else? What is God's expectation for me as I look at the poor? When I have a son who lives in Berkeley, California with his family, and not far from his house, all around his house, and he lives in a nice area. They're what they call encampments for the homeless, where there are a lot of people. I mean, you may have 25, 30, 40, 50 people living in tents on a street corner. And it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And many of the tents are better equipped, higher caliber tent than the 6-person tent that my wife and I have. And I asked my son about that once. I said, how is it these people get all these nice tents? And some of them seem to have really nice apparel for the outdoors, all-weather kind of jackets and so forth. And he said, Dad, because the income level is so high out here in the Berkeley, California area, he said, there are a lot of people who actually feel like it's their responsibility to reach out to the poor in this way, to give them the nicer tents or to provide them with nicer jackets that they can wear that can better protect them from the cold. And I began to think about it, and I said, what is really my responsibility to the poor? What is my responsibility to the homeless? And I think it is one of the critical questions today. I was sharing before the break that in Congress and the Senate, one of the issues that they're really dealing with is what is really the responsibility of the government to the poor? And and at what point does our responsibility overlap with our empathy? And then there are economists who are saying that the present level of poverty in America and the rate of growth of poverty in America is such that the United States budget cannot sustain it. It is an unsustainable way of running a government. And at some point, hard questions have to be asked in terms of at what point does the government and do the people say collectively that we cannot afford to go over a certain amount without diminishing our own style of living. And that's one part of the question. The other part of this business of Christianity, modern Christianity and empathy, is what we're seeing in America is we do see empathy, but to me, the craziest kinds of ways, we're seeing an argument when people say, well, I'm going to have empathy, but it's going to be for people who are more like me, starting with my own self and my own family. But we're seeing it in our politics, an empathy in the government for white Afrikaners, who, invaded South Africa in the 1600s, and with an enormous amount of brutality, to welcome them as migrants to America. At the same time, when you have other people of color, both from India, both from South America, Central America, who are rejected. And you and I'm raising the question today, and I want you to think about it and ask yourself, when am I empathetic, and to whom am I empathetic to? Jesus says, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison and sick, you visited me. And that's Matthew chapter 25. You and I need to continually ask ourselves, what am I doing with the challenge of Jesus to be empathetic? And am I empathetic? Even if you want to act like the Congress of the United States, you could say, am I being empathetic to my own family? You know, I know a lot of family people who will turn their back on a brother, turn their back on a sister, and not only turn their back on a brother or sister, they will undercut a brother or sister when mommy or daddy dies, and, you know, try to cut them out of the will, to cut them out of the intentions of mom or dad or grandmom or granddad. And I think it is a continual challenge that you and I need to ask ourselves. It is not just in the modern Christianity, not the modern, just the modern life. Frankly, since the beginning of time, people have been asking themselves, what is my responsibility to the poor? And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to get my 2 big feet into heaven. And I'm convinced that one of the tests for going through the open door of Jesus Christ is, was I responsive? Was I empathetic to the poor? And if I am empathetic to the poor, then that means that I'm not only going to be cognizant of the poor, I'm not only recognizing that somebody's hungry, but in my recognition that you are hungry, I'm actually going to try to feed you. In my recognition that you are without housing, I'm going to try to find a way to house you. In my recognition that you are crying and brokenhearted, I'm not just going to recognize that you are full of tears, but I am going to try to help you. And sometimes when you try to help somebody, you do your best. But even then, sometimes it goes horribly wrong. You know, I've found some of the biggest problems I've had as a minister over the last 49 years is when I reached out to help somebody. You know, there's no fire like friendly fire. And I've gotten in between men and women when they were fighting. I don't know why I have done that. I'm trying to slow down at this stage of my life. But I've actually sat down with men and women, husbands and wives, who had been physically in an altercation with each other. And, you know, to talk to the man, to say, you can't beat a woman. You can't beat your wife. Do you understand that? But you know, the Lord has protected me. I've never gotten hit in that kind of situation. I've never been attacked. But maybe worse than being attacked is in my empathy for a situation. When I've gotten involved in marital disputes, sometimes I've had people to leave the church because they were mad at me. And all I was trying to do was help them, like Rodney King would say, can't we all get along? And so empathy sometimes has a price to pay. You know, when you empathize with somebody else, you take the time to talk with them, if you take the time to talk with whoever is hurting them, you need to be prepared for friendly fire. And friendly fire is not always kind. You may lose a friend in the process. And so, you know, I'm near the end of this program, but I just want to challenge you to be empathetic, to take a moment before you shut the door in somebody's face, before you just cut them out of your life. I want you to just stop for a minute and ask yourself, can I feel what this person is feeling? Can I understand truly what this person is going through? can I understand even people that I don't know that well, but they're impoverished. They don't have enough money to feed themselves or their family. They don't have a decent place to live. What am I prepared to do to help that person? And I think that is the continual question that God is asking for you and me. God is asking us every day of our lives, help somebody else. And I'm so glad, I'm going to be honest, my whole ministry, I've been helping people. I help people right here in Detroit. My church has housing that was built in, now I'm thinking of the date, 1960. It broke ground in the summer of 1967, the same time of the riot in Detroit. We paid it off in, I think it was 2007. But it's for low and moderate income people. And where it's one of the least expensive rent in all of Detroit, and we don't charge utilities for it. And that is really one church's way to reach out to the poor. And I try to do that on international missions, refugees of war from Liberia and other places. But the point that I want to leave you with today is simply, when I was hungry, did you feed me? When I was thirsty, did you give me something to drink? And I'm reaching out to you right now because this ministry needs your help. This ministry is hungry for your help. And if this has been a blessing to you today, I want you to consider supporting Nick Hood Ministries, 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201. God bless, God keep you, and remember, I am praying for you. God bless.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it, and really get it into their heart. And this, the way Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days, we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
Thank you for watching today's program. We hope you've been blessed in a powerful way. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries at 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan.